Eden Town Hall is a community forum for fractal governance innovation. It's dedicated to exploring the future of collaborative decision-making and fractal governance. Following each Eden Fractal event, we gather to dive deeper into the ideas, innovations, and strategies that are transforming how communities coordinate and make decisions together. You can learn more at edentownhall.com, how you can get involved and how we're supporting Eden Fractal and Eden Fractal's mission in the transformative Epoch 2. Check out edenfractal.com to learn more about the Eden Fractal community that we're supporting, as well as the fractal ecosystem, the ecosystem of communities who are cooperating with fractal decision-making processes, such as the respect game. You can learn all about these at edenfractal.com, and also check out our past episodes of Eden Town Hall on the Eden Creators YouTube channel. We've had 59 so far. This is our 60th event, our 60th Eden Town Hall event, so that's very exciting. Last week, we had a great discussion about community governance and fractal expansion. Encourage you to check out the links or just go through, go check out all the timestamps and so forth. We had some really great discussions here about fractal governance, and love to see all the momentum and enthusiasm in the ecosystem. I think that fractal ecosystem is going big places, from the roots at More Equal Animals. And then also our prior episodes about reviving Eden Town Hall and our 3rd anniversary celebration were also excellent too. So encourage you to check it out. And for this week's event, I mean, we don't have like a agendas game with a predetermined topic, so we'll have open discussion. I also have some topics that I wanted to bring up, and just curious to hear everybody's thoughts about it. And I'll briefly mention these and we can get into those. One is the event scheduling with the upcoming summer break coming for the Optimistics events. As well as I've been thinking about the longer term schedule for the ecosystem, as well as in general. There's a lot that we have not yet accomplished with Eden Fractal Epoch 2 yet that we set out to do. So I'll give a little bit of an overview there and the ideas. I'm thinking that we can save the agendas, implementation and stuff for maybe after the break. Also want to give a shout out. We were just talking about Base, which has had a rebrand, which is where Eden Fractal is now operating. So Base just had all sorts of great stuff, like the new logo and the launch of Base app. So encourage people to check it out. Check out all the great open protocols that we're collaborating with and building alongside, rather, at base.org and base.app. So and then the things I wanted to bring up in particular. So one, when we first set out on Eden Fractal Epoch 2, even before we started Epoch 2, I had written this article at Eden Fractal Epoch 2 implementation plan, fulfilling the vision of Eden Fractal, which has some details of what is Epoch 2 and so forth. There's an article about that. But then specifically, this implementation plan was aimed to guide us into determining all the things that we need to do to really like actualize what we're aiming to do with Eden Fractal Epoch 2. I'm rhyming a little bit here. And so I'm going to go over some of these. We successfully implemented ORDAO, the smart contract infrastructure that is underlying the cooperation and the respect game and the executive governance process of Eden Fractal. We implemented that back at the beginning of Epoch 2, about 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago now. And we started playing the respect game. We had, I think, 4 successful respect games since then. We also revived the Eden Town Hall, and this is our 4th Eden Town Hall, I think, since we launched Epoch 2. We have been using Fractogram, the Telegram app that Tadas had built for our games. And we've also heard some great updates from Abraham at yesterday's ORDAO Fractal meeting about the web app that he's been building. So we've configured it to a sufficient extent right now, but we aim to improve that. And then the things that we haven't done yet for Epoch 2, we have not yet created a legislative consensus process. We talked about this quite a bit. At Optimism Fractal, we have a tripartite governance structure with the respect game as a judiciary branch, the ORDAO as an executive branch, and the Optimism Fractal Council as legislative consensus process. Right now, Eden Fractal has ORDAO as executive and respect game as the judicial branch in a way, but we don't have a legislative consensus process. So we have a little article with thoughts here. We previously talked about something called ORPolls, optimistic respect-based polls that could work, or we have some other ideas and some other kinds of legislative consensus processes that we've done previously, such as Eden Plus Fractal and the Optimism Fractal Council design. So that's something we can discuss, and it would be nice to get this set up at some point soon, as well as an agreement. We talked a lot about having a participant agreement for Eden Fractal, and we talked about how we can use HATS protocol for that, and then use token gating to make it so that certain permissions are required upon signing an agreement. And we've made some progress with drafting agreement for Optimism Fractal, but we don't yet have one for Eden Fractal. And we also don't have an intent document. Optimism Fractal has at optimismfractal.com/intent. there's a page where it shows like specifically how the community operates, which Eden Fractal doesn't have succinctly explained anywhere. So we aim to create an intent document. And then, but we don't have that yet. I also have to think about respect distribution considerations for Block 2. As of right now, there's still no respect given for Eden Fractal events 75 through 120 when respect games weren't played. And then there's also some notes here too about many other fractals that we could start respecting, such as the Genesis fractal, and like Optimism fractal, Zaal fractal, Eden EOS, Alien Worlds fractal, Upscale fractal, Aqua DAC, Spanish speaking fractal, etc. All of these that have contributed in various ways to the fractal ecosystem. That we talked about ideas about higher order fractals that Eden Fractal could start doing to respect other fractals as well, which I think is interesting. And then there's also some notes about a capital allocation framework, which I think is really dependent upon these other things. Before you can start allocating capital, I think you need to have some of these other elements in place. And we talked about meeting time adjustment, but I think we'll stick with the current time unless people want to change it. And then also there's a impact concert that I've been aiming to coordinate with Easy and Crypto that he brought up several times, and that's I think in the works. So I just want to give people an update about where we're at right now with Eden Fractal Epoch 2, and I'd be curious to hear everybody's thoughts about these things. Can talk about any of them. And then the other thing I want to bring up, yeah, what's up?
I just want to mention I'm talking to Easy this weekend specifically about that Impact concert. If you're available, we'd love to have you join in as well. But if
Yes, I would
not,
love.
no worries. I'll just shoot you a message and what we're thinking, and if not, I'll try and get him over here one of the days.
Thank you, Zaal. I would love to join. I apologize that I haven't. I said I was going to follow up, but I've had all this other stuff going on, and now I finally got most out of the way. So, yeah, please do send me a message with an invite and a time, and I should be able to join on the weekend. So, yeah, just let me know when is good for you guys.
Perfect. We haven't scheduled it yet, but we're planning for Saturday earlier in the day. I'll just shoot you a text, and if it doesn't work, we can always push it off an hour. I'm sure they're pretty open as well. So, yeah, I'm super excited to get started on that. We at the Zaal have created another project called COC Concerts. We're collaborating with the Community of Communities, one of our really close communities that we love to support, and essentially just doing metaverse concerts through that. So we wanted to leverage that with the impact concerts, with the fractal ecosystems, kind of all in one, and really make a banging concert. So I think there's a lot of cool things we could do, and yeah, I'm super excited about this initiative.
All right, excellent. I'm super excited about that too. Thanks, Saul. Looking forward to hearing more about the COC, the COC community, and all the other cool things you mentioned. And yeah, I was also thinking I had some ideas about how we could maybe do Fractal DJ and stuff like that. So yeah, really excited to hear from you and Easy, as well as discuss with you guys next steps about how we can do impact concerts and all sorts of cool collaborations. Also want to help support you with Zaal Fractal too. I know that at some point you reached out and expressed interest in talking about that. So I'd love to talk about that as well. And if you want to talk about that, however I can help you over the weekend or next weekend, I'd be happy to as well. I just want to say Tadas' lighting looks super cool right now. It looks like you could probably be like, if you want to make an album cover of some sort and you want to release like some sort of dance album, then I think you got your cover. Just take a screenshot of that. um, okay, there's maybe one more thing I'll share real quick before just like totally opening up. Feel free if anyone wants to jump in, like Zaal did. I appreciate that. But yeah, one of the things I wanted to share that I shared during my Respect Game presentation is I did a lot of thinking over the past couple weeks about the timing of the events. I also talked about this. I brought it up briefly at the end of Optimism Fractal's event last week. And I had made a document. It's kind of like a very first draft document, so I don't know if it's all right yet. But perhaps it can help guide the conversation, help people understand if they're interested in it. And I'd also be very curious to hear Zaal and Will, your perspective, as well as Rosemary and Tadas, because trying to balance multiple different kinds of desires and needs. I know in particular, Will and Zaal, when we had taken the 2 event break from Optimism Fractal and Eden Fractal over the winter, you guys both made a comment that I appreciate very much, that saying that you thought it was too long of a break. And so I'm thinking that we kind of need to take longer breaks in a way, but also want to balance it and find ways that it's not too long, and also that it's like supporting the communities as much as we can, and so forth, while also balancing like our time and resources, and also just like the timing of the seasons too. So as I mentioned briefly in my Respect Game presentation, there's a chat with ChatGPT here where you can see like our previous plan was to skip one event for each Optimism Fractal and Eden Fractal during mid-season, and then skip 2 events at the end of season. This is what we had determined to do. That's still up in the air too. I mean, we could change that too to do less or more, but that was kind of like the previous plan that we said that we do. Although one thing that I noticed I've been trying to basically resolve is that because Eden Fractal started its season and its Epoch 2 after one event, when we came back from the break from Eden Fractal, we had an event preparing for Epoch 2, and then we started Epoch 2 an event later. So that means that Eden Fractal, we just had our fifth Optimism Fractal event of the season last week, and Optimism Fractal will be having its final event of the first half of the season on July 24th of next week. And then it's scheduled to skip an event on August 7th. And then Eden Fractal, we're having our 4th Eden Fractal event of the season technically now. And if we just went by that seasonal schedule, then we would skip the event after the 6th event, which would be skipping the 28th, in which case these 2 events are quite spaced out in terms of when their breaks are. And then also when we come back from the breaks, there will be, depending on exactly how we do it, like say Optimism Fractal would be skipping Thanksgiving, but then it'd be coming back and then it'd be Christmas and there'd be New Year shortly after as well. And so I've also been thinking about having it where Optimism Fractal skips 2 events in the middle of the season, and Eden Fractal just skips 1 event in the middle of the season, which would allow Eden Fractal to skip up to catch up with Optimism Fractal in terms of the amount of events, and also allow kind of a more like combined break where they're together and not like one's at the beginning of the month and one's at the end of the month. It's not necessary to do this, but I see practical benefit in having these on the same schedule, and it makes it easier for the Optimistics team, perhaps easier for people in the community when the breaks are synchronized at the same time. And then, yeah, either way, there's still the issue of the end of season, like coming back on, say, Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's. And so what I'm currently thinking is best, and what I started drafting in this this Optimistics proposed schedule, is to do that thing I mentioned, where we have 2 skips of Optimism Fractal and then 1 skip of Eden Fractal in the midseason. And then at the end of the year, we would have a 2 event break as normal, but then we'd also have a 1 event break for holiday season. So it'd effectively be a 3 event break, which would be quite a long time away from events, which is longer than we've ever done before. That'd be like almost 2 months away from the events. So maybe that's too much, but I'm just not sure how to resolve that otherwise, unless like maybe we can come back for an event before we go to Christmas break or something like that, but that might be kind of awkward. We don't necessarily need to figure this all out now because we could figure that out later, but it is kind of a good time to figure out because we have the breaks coming up in the next week or 2 weeks. So I want to just bring it to everybody's attention here. I'm happy to share this document if anybody wants to check it out and comment on it. And my thinking is that if we have it where there's not as many events, like because I'm reluctant to skip more events because I love having the events and love having these community gatherings and seeing everybody, and also really appreciate the feedback from Will and Zaal, indicating that they want to have more events. But I figure like for all those reasons, like synchronizing them, not overlapping with holidays, and also it is just really helpful to have time to do other things, like for example, do say business development or working on like different kinds of development without having to, as the Optimistics team, host the event and produce the event and so forth. It does help to have some events that are skipped to make like a more sustainable schedule for the reason that we discussed previously. And I think one way we could also do it well is if we are like by having not as many events sometimes, that provides space for other events to come in their place. Like for example, like Zaal and I were just talking about the Impact concert. One of the things that I wanted to propose for Easy, if he's up for it, is like maybe we can organize an Impact concert and maybe do like a Fractal DJ kind of thing that's helping the Fractal ecosystem maybe in this week of August 21st. if he's available and interested in doing it, then I know that he said he needs like at least a few weeks, but that's like a month away. So that's something that can maybe like kind of provide a community space where we can help support fractals during that extra week if we do take Optimism Fractal off that week. And then, for example, at the end of the year, outside of the holidays, when I suppose people will probably want to mostly be with their families and stuff like that, maybe we can organize some other events like impact concerts, or like, for example, at past Optimism Fractal breaks, we still hosted Optimism town halls. So we could potentially still host town halls, or we've also done other things. Like, for example, I host a show called Fractal Apple that would love to do at some point when more time is available. So like, and maybe other community leaders could host events that bring together fractal ecosystem community members too. So that'd be my thought, that if we do wind up doing these longer breaks, that we could have it as a way for more community leaders to host events, as well as more time to get creative with different things that support the fractal ecosystem. And then, of course, the idea would be that we would host the Optimism Fractal and Eden Fractal events on a consistent schedule throughout all of these. And also, I should mention Tadas has been hosting Order Fractal events too. So that's also another place where community members can gather and get involved and play respect games and so forth. So those are my thoughts there. Thanks all for listening. I know that was kind of lengthy, but I just wanted to share these thoughts with you all and see what you think. So if anybody has any thoughts in general about the fractal ecosystem, then feel free. We can have an open discussion. If anybody has other topics you'd like to address, then feel free to let us know. And then I'd be particularly curious to hear your thoughts about this this schedule 2025. Do you think it's too long? Do you think it's a good idea for these breaks? And then also the Epoch 2 implementation plan, specifically probably this legislative consent process, the implementation of agreement, the creation of intent document, respect, distribution, governance, distributions, considerations. I think that these are some things that would be great to discuss. So floor is totally open now, and curious if anybody has any thoughts that you'd like to share. I see Will has his hands up. Will, what do you think?
Thank you. Yeah, I think synchronizing the schedules is a wise idea. I know a lot of us live off our calendars, especially in this digital world that we're in. So I would be in favor of that proposal of kind of syncing up the events to where, like right now, we kind of have good alignment, right? Or Dow Fractal is as required. Eden Fractal events are on the opposite weeks of Optimism Town Hall. So yeah, I'd be in favor of that. I also think that logical next step in moving this community forward would be to get the intents documentation in a published form, so that everybody understands what the intent of this community is, and then we can start working through the rest of the items that are still outstanding for this epoch.
That sounds good. Thank you, Will, for your input and insights. Much appreciated. For anybody who may be watching and isn't familiar, the Optimism Fractal events are actually at optimismfractal.com/details. And here you can see an example of some intents that we could adopt, something similar. And Tadas has also made similar but more simple intents for Order Fractal. And yeah, I agree. That'd be a great thing to have to provide the simple specifications for how Eden Fractal will work. Make it easier for people like David who want to check out the documentation. All right.
Yeah, so
And
everyone sees these dogs for the first time then.
what's
Yeah.
that?
Everyone sees these dogs for the first time now. No, just joking.
We should have an AI agent and call it Docs.
Yeah.
Okay, good ideas. So Tadas, is there more you wanted to share? Well, you jumping and joking.
Yeah, just no, just regarding the schedule, my perspective is 2 event break for Optimism Fractal and 1 event break for Eden Fractal sounds good. And I wouldn't like plan that much farther ahead. Maybe Well, typically I would suggest like take breaks whenever, like we said, one event break for mid-season and 2 event break between seasons. And if there are like holidays, we take some breaks as required. Although if like a normal event wouldn't happen like right on Christmas, for example, we could like have that event somewhere in the middle of the week. But yeah, but either way, I would just take breaks as required. Yeah, and I think we won't be able to always like have a schedule perfectly aligned with all the holiday schedules. So I wouldn't like try to perfect right now. Yeah, and regarding intent of Eden Fractal, we need a consensus process for Eden Fractal first, right? And lately I've been thinking about I don't know, but maybe let's finish about the schedule if anyone has more thoughts on that.
Great points, Tadas. I agree. You'd be curious if Rosemary will have more thoughts on it. I'll also add too. So one, I agree that we don't need to think too far ahead. Although I think it's helpful to keep in the back of our minds, because if we do go with this way of skipping 2 events for Optimism Fractal and 1 event for Eden Fractal, then our plan is just to do the biweekly events back to back as normal, and then that would leave us at returning for Optimism Fractal on December 25th, which is Christmas. So I don't think we should do it then. So that's why I think that it would make sense probably to have like a 2 event break as normal, but then probably take maybe 2 events off for Eden Fractal and come back on New Year's Day, and 3 events off from Optimism Fractal, and then we come back on January 8th. But that's also something we can figure out later too. And who knows, maybe something will happen where our schedules get thrown off. So I agree, let's focus on the ones that are coming. One thing I want to mention too that I actually didn't that I discussed with Rosemary on a couple of days ago that I didn't properly represent here is I do think it makes sense to still right now it says skipping August 28th for Eden Fractal. But what I think makes more sense is skipping August 14th for Eden Fractal. So that will be 6. So and that we'll be coming back on August 28th, but we'd be skipping August 14th. So that way it'd be having the break after 6 events since the last break of Eden Fractal. There would be 5 events of Epoch 2 that before we having the break. And then we would just have the first half of the season would be 5 events of the Epoch 2, which I think we call season 11 because we talked about how each season could be 10 seasons and it technically started on the 121st event. And then after the break, then we'd have 7 events, basically. We'd have one on August 28th and then up until the November 20th. So that way we just have all the breaks in one kind of like just in one period rather than split up. So we'd have basically the optimistics events for Optimism Fractal and Eden Fractal. We would have the last Eden Fractal of this half of the season on July 31st. We'd have one more Eden Fractal event in 2 weeks. We'll have an Optimism Fractal event in 1 week. And then we would have most of the month of August off because we'd have August 7th with no event, August 14th with no event, and August 21st with no event. And then Eden Fractal will be returning on August 28th, and Optimism Fractal will be returning on September 4th. So just to clarify that, we'd be curious if anybody has any thoughts on that, or if anybody else has any other thoughts on the scheduling. I agree with Tadas. Maybe it makes sense to focus on the scheduling first, and then we can talk about the legislative consensus process and intent document and anything else we want to discuss there. Tadas, Will, Rosemary, do you have any other thoughts about the event scheduling forecast? So one other thing I'll add too is that I'm planning to make a proposal about this because right now Optimism Fractal has a legislative consensus process, but Eden Fractal does not. So I think with Eden Fractal, we'll just go ahead and do it, whatever we decide here. But for Optimism Fractal, we'll make a proposal with the Optimism Fractal Council. So I'm planning to make that proposal for the Optimism Fractal Council. I believe the counselors for this week are me, Will, and Rosemary. So we'll have that vote. Technically, there's a part about like how it's governed and so forth that we can get into. But I read in that previously. I think it's good practice to make the proposal. So I plan to do that in the coming week, so we can keep an eye out for that. But yeah, curious if anybody has any other feedback about this event schedule before we move on.
I have no other feedback. I look forward to the proposal.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Will. I see Tadas shaking his head too. Welcome back, Zaal. So it seems like we're ready to move to on the next topic then, right?
I'm nodding my head, not shaking my head.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's a difference. You're shaking your head up and down, maybe you could say, but yeah, nodding your head. Yeah, I thought you were just working on your DJ career and listen to some beats. And I see Rosemary gave a thumbs up too. All right. I bet that's what the DOS listens to during every Fractal meeting, just on like repeat. You're just in the zone for it. All right. At some point too, maybe I'll just add this just for fun, but like this is something that I really want at Fractals. Like I think that Fractals would be a lot better with music, like TV shows. And in the beginning, we had that a little bit in past Fractals. We have music, so I'm just going to add that to the implementation plan as something for the future. More music.
Kind of like how some Discords have like the music pod in the background.
Yeah,
Like a lower volume. Yeah.
Yeah, I have in my research document. I thought of like AI could, like when you're giving your presentation, it gives you like some cool background noise. That's like or whatever it might be. And then also like especially when you're getting ready for the event, like if you're at like a sports event, there's always music playing, and then people start playing basketball or something like that. I see some interesting comments in the chat. Rosemary shared, I think having a summer break during summer is great. I agree. And then Zaal read binaural dance beats, great idea, break. And then I love music. Let's talk about let's talk about the impact concert convo on that too. Absolutely. Sounds great, Zaal. I'd love to. And then Rosemary said that she felt like it was a bit repetitive just playing respect games today. So yeah, taking a break will give us time to refresh. And then yeah, hopefully, I mean, it's meant to be repetitive, but hopefully it'll be lots of fun and enjoyable for you and enjoyable for everybody. And especially when we can put more time and effort into it. Like, for example, if we have a break, maybe during that break, we can work on getting more music in and so forth and making it more fun, because it is a bit of a grind when we're like doing it week after week and working on a lot in the early days. Like I mentioned, in the future, we'll have, many more people and music and all these fun things that will really make it the game that it can be, and the great time and awesome time that can be and will be, and it often is. But yeah, I think giving more time into it will let us put more effort into making it even better. So thanks everybody for sharing your thoughts and feedback, and I think that we're ready for moving on. So if anybody else any other topic, then feel free to share, or anything else you'd like to discuss, feel free to jump in. But otherwise, the thing that
I have a question for you, Dan.
Sure.
So I have this thought for something similar to Congendas for the Zaal, but more on a week-to-week basis of where we should put our energy, if that makes sense. So stuff like the Zaal Fractal, Wave Wars, COC concerts, different projects that we're working on. It would be cool for me to have everyone that's kind of like joining in the Fractal every Monday to kind of vote on what they feel like is the most, vote with their Zaal on what they feel like is the most important thing for this week to pay attention to, where week to week that might change. If they don't change it, it's going to kind of keep the same thing from last week. I'm curious, from your knowledge, would Snapshot be able to do something like that? Or would that have to be more of a custom build? And I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts on something like that, if you have any additional ideas.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Great ideas and great question. I see Rosemary wrote Snapshot work, so I agree. You can do it on Snapshot. I've thought about this kind of thing a lot, and I'll share a couple of links here to show some of the thinking here. I know Tadas has also thought about it quite a bit too. So for sure, you could just go and just make a Snapshot poll. I brought up the Optimism Town Hall Snapshot poll, but you could do, for the or Snapshot Space, I should say. But you could have it where you just put up a poll there and then vote either for and against or abstain, or you could do a weighted poll. I know we've done quite a few weighted polls before, like for example, you remember the OP Topics games that we played a lot, where there'd be like lots of different topics that we could discuss, and we use this weighted poll. For example, here where you could choose to put 20% of your respect for this topic and 80% for this topic, whatever it may be. So I think that provides a lot of the good foundations. And then yes, he's all said if you could do it in Charmverse, even better. And then that's exactly what you're thinking about it from it too. So you can definitely do it with this kind of style that Snapshot allows. I think maybe Charmverse does too. A lot of different tools and enable this kind of weighted voting. I think that's really what you want, probably the weighted voting. You could use ranked choice voting or quadratic voting, something like that, alternatively if you wanted. But I think any of them could work, and weighted voting seems to work out pretty well. And then a couple of things I'll share that are in relation to this are, one, I had this idea for retro polls, or we sometimes called it allo polls or respect polls. We never actually did this. I was aiming to do it at the end of, I think, Optimism Fractal season 4, but we talked about it a lot, but then just circumstances didn't allow it to happen. But basically, this was the idea of having it where this was specifically for evaluating contributions. The goal here was to evaluate contributions to optimism as a whole, that the Optimism Fractal community could use weighted voting polls to vote on different contributions across the Optimism ecosystem and provide that service to the Optimism Collective. But it could really be used for anything, including like priorities and things you want to focus on for the Zaal fractal, or anything else that you want to get people's opinions on. And so there's an article, optimistic.io/retro polls, which basically some of it's specific to the optimism use case. Quite a bit of it is, but the basic idea here is to do it on Snapshot X or Snapshot. I chose Snapshot X because that's the on-chain version of Snapshot. And I had the idea that we could use weighted voting capabilities, and then you could have different voting strategies for different stakeholder groups. So that's basically a similar idea. I've also thought there are some limitations in Snapshot too. So at some point, I'd love to make a custom app for this that overcomes some of those limitations. If you'd like, I can share those with you when we get together. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I have some of them written down and documented. But generally, Snapshot should get you a good way there. And then towards the bottom of this article, one, you can find the video about this too if you want. It's from like Option Town Hall number 30 or something like that. And then we have a section about the inspiration for retro polls, which is respect trees. I'm not sure if you're familiar with respect trees, Zaal, but this is an idea that Tadas had come up with. I see that Rosemary said that she's got to go because it's getting late. Thank you all. It's great being here. Thank you, Rosemary. Hope you have a great night, and thank you for being here. And then sounds good. Thanks for the feedback, Zaal. Excited to help and collaborate with you too, and you're very welcome. And you might want to check out this idea of respect trees too. This is also in a rather conceptual stage, like a pretty refined conceptual stage, because we've talked about it a lot over the past like 2.5 years now or something like that. And we have some nice little article and several videos about respect trees. So also originally introduces at Eden Fractal number 60. And then we talked about this as well as Optimism Fractal 16, which is basically, I think that if we were to go here, Tadas had an article about this that inspired this discussion, where he thought it was a primitive that could be used by a fractal with respect to organize thoughts of a group of people, help and track, determine priority of topics to discuss, goals and tasks to pursue, questions to research to answer, issues to solve, projects to develop, validate and select solutions, and then all of this using a single smart contract that implements a simple tree data structure where nodes are weighted by respect votes. Das had more details about the technicals, about how it will work, and you can see an example here about basically like he has what should be our priority, should it be our mission statement, or improving agendas, or improving your respect game app, or breakout room process, whatever. Feel free, Tadas, if you want to jump in with any more thoughts on this, because they have a bunch. But that's like a big inspiration, and Tadas gave a very thorough overview in this Eden Fractal 60 video. I actually just listened to this again, like maybe 8 months ago or a year ago, as I was working on the retro polls idea, and it's really fascinating to listen to it. So I think that like we have a lot of the foundations for how that could be done. Also, in my recent research paper, I wrote about how I think that in the long term, fractals can start ranking all sorts of things. Like, for example, people's technical capabilities and you can have kind of like how massive online role playing game has all these different stats for people. You can like rank different stats and stuff. So I think there's a long way that can go there. And yeah, I'd be happy to talk more about it. Zaal, if you want to share any more thoughts about that, then feel free. But those are some of the resources I can give you about ways that we've experienced or experimented with that so far. And I guess the one other site that I could share is just, I think you're probably familiar with it because you said the OP Topics inspired, but this is OP Topics article is another, it shows another like specific implementation of it that has worked pretty well. Although, like I said, like one of the reasons why we haven't been doing OP Topics is because Snapshot doesn't provide exactly the features that I really want for that. But yeah, you could probably do it mostly with Snapshot or Charmburst. I'd recommend trying it out and then maybe just exploring these resources to learn more and get inspired as well. So hopefully that's a helpful answer for you. You're welcome, Zaal. Thanks for asking. Really appreciate it. And excited to see what you'll do with these kinds of consensus mechanisms and games and so forth to help people in the Zaal fractal better understand, help also the whole fractal ecosystem. All right. Does anybody else have any comments on this, or should we move back to I think we were previously going to back to about the intents and the and the legislative consensus process and all these different things?
So is the point to do a deep dive on the intents right now or at a future session?
Well, I guess it depends on what I guess it depends on what our intent is. So I suppose we can decide that. I know Tadas had suggested that, or it seemed like he kind of hinted or implied that you need to have a consensus process to determine an intent. And we could
Okay.
we could also for sure brainstorm our intents too now if we wanted to. But I agree with Tadas that it'll be like more legitimate and like easier to form consensus on it if we have a consensus process. We could also use ORDAO as our consensus process too. That's an idea that we could use ORDAO as the interim legislative consensus process. So if we want, we could just start with the intent document. And I think the intent document will like not be that different probably from the Optimism Fractal one. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's like Optimism Fractal one's pretty good. And we could probably just change a couple of things here and there. But maybe there's more that we want to change as well. But I don't know, I'd be curious. But to me, it seems like a lot of it can be copy and pasted. So I see Tadas is unmuted. Tadas, what do you think?
There is a chicken and egg problem here because like intent document would define the consensus process. But like how do we decide how do we like decide the intent document without having a consensus process? And the interesting part here is that we already were at this point with Eden Fractal in the beginning. And there we just had, I think, a couple of meetings where, or at least one meeting where everyone voted, and basically everyone voted on selecting one specific consensus process to pass everything. So basically to decide everything else later. And yeah, so that consensus process was Eden Plus Fractal consensus process. I think we talked about it a bit earlier in Eden Fractal meetings. Yeah, and related to that, I've been thinking about it over the last like weeks, and especially now that I've been documenting the mechanisms that fractals have used in the past, and part of me thinks that Eden plus Fractal was the most successful consensus process that we have tried. I think it might be even better than what Optimism Fractal uses. And like one of the effects that maybe we haven't talked about yet is I think it might incentivize people to come to these events more. In general, one way it does that is because all decisions have to be made during that time, during an hour after the spec game. and that basically gives that our after is very interactive and very actually like live and interesting, because the discussion is much more, I would say, intense, but that produces, I think, a lot of good ideas and good content, and I think once people feel that excitement of trying to get proposal passed and sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding, that might be like something that attracts to come back, because you have invested some energy and you felt progress in having a proposal passed, and that can be like something that hooks you in. And another way Eden Plus Fractal helps is simply because it involves delegating people from their breakout groups to be a delegate for next 4 weeks and next 4 events actually, and that I think that actually asks people to commit to come back to the events, and I think that might actually help sometimes for people to keep participating. And I don't see anything wrong to like to ask people that, because it's really helpful for the organization. Yeah, and typically we don't choose a delegate who cannot like say that he is going to participate. Yeah, but when it comes, if we use this, it takes like 4 events according to original Eden Plus Fractal process. It takes at least 3 events actually to start passing proposals, because the councils need to be set up during meetings. So it would take time, and I don't know how it would work with bi-weekly meeting structure, because previously we used it with weekly structure. So yeah, so those are just some thoughts. Curious what others think about it.
No, I think everything you just stated there is logical, makes sense, and it also kind of speaks to the DAO trilemma, right? And one of those aspects of it is getting people to engage in the voting process and reach consensus in that as well. So yeah, it makes sense to me.
Real quick, I've heard the block dilemma, but what is the parameters of trilemma?
What was that you shared, Saul? It was a bit muffled. You said, what is the parameters of what?
I was just saying, what are the parameters of the DAO trilemma? I've heard of the blockchain trilemma, and I'm just curious what the challenge is there, because I mean, I can definitely see it, but I'm curious what people believe are the 3 parameters for DAO, the DAO trilemma. I've never heard that terminology.
Will, do you want to elaborate on the DAO trilemma and what are the parameters of it?
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about this quite a bit in the Let's Grow DAO meetings that we have every week. So voting voting is one of the 3 pillars of that. Active participation within the community is the other one, and then the DAO itself being innovative enough in order to keep evolving and keep maturing based against their mission and what they're building.
Yep, voting for us is the challenge right now. So I like that a lot. I'm gonna probably put some of this in the white paper, because yeah, thanks, Will.
No problem.
All right. Thank you, Will and Zaal and Tadas. I have some comments. I'd be curious to hear everybody else's, but maybe I'll go first. So yeah, I did I'm pulling this up on the screen with how Eden Plus Fractal works. I know we went over that in a recent Eden Fractal episode, maybe from like a few months ago. And I remember, I think at first Will and Zaal were a bit confused by it, but then when I showed this picture, I think they maybe each said that like this picture helped them understand it. So I encourage people to check out edencreators.com/plus for the original proposal that Tadas made about the Eden Plus Fractal process, as well as the specifications of it, as well as you can find videos from when we talked about it back in the day at Eden Fractal and implemented it at Eden Fractal meeting 19 over 100 events ago. So that article has a lot of resources where people can learn about it. And also me and Tadas did an episode too, an interview, a discussion at Creator Talk where we went into details right when Tadas first, like maybe a week after Tadas shared the idea for Eden Plus Fractal. So those are some great resources where you can learn more about Eden Plus Fractal and encourage people to check it out. I think it's a fascinating consensus process, but I'm also gonna maybe Tadas, I think we had the most participation in passing proposals when using Eden Plus Fractal. I think that's true. I think also that was when we just had the most participation in fractals as well. So that might be more of a correlation than a causation. That's when the Genesis fractal was still kind of like hot and they had a lot of attention and stuff like that. So
Yeah, just want to jump in. A note that I also think just mentioned that I think Eden Plus Fractal process might have had something to do with that rate of participation. Of course, there are other factors, and it's hard to say how much of an positive effect it had.
Yep, I agree. I think it definitely did contribute to the participation. At that time, we also had these long events, and people would stick around. We'd have lots of people sticking around for 2 hours or more after the events, after their spec games, and it made some really interesting discussions. If people go through edenfractal.com videos, well, I suppose one thing I want to call their attention to is just that we had a great discussion about the legislative process. Maybe two discussions. I don't think we discussed it at EF 120, but EF 119 and EF 118, we talked a lot about the consensus processes, as well as EF 117. We talked about the tripartite governance structure, how it can work with ORDAO. But yeah, I think these two events, we went into much more detail about Eden Plus Fractal and the consensus processes. So these videos provide more detail about these different consensus processes. We provide an overview of the Optimism Fractal Council, as well as the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process much more. And then, yeah, people were to scroll down, we use Eden Plus Fractal until something like event 75 or 80 or something. So we used it for like over a year, I think. And a lot of these events had like these really great discussions about fractals that we were making decisions with the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process. So I think there's a lot of benefits to it. I know there also was some feedback too that some people said, it takes so long to make a decision. And sometimes we had issues where people wouldn't be there, even though we liked them as a delegate. I think some of the benefits of the Optimism Fractal Council were, or some of the reasons, like we designed that to make it much easier to approve proposals where you didn't need to have a meeting for it, and that's also had some benefits too. So my perspective is that, and the other thing I want to bring up here too is, and what I still think is probably best, is the ORPolls one, and I'd be curious to hear what you think about this. I think if I bring up, it looks like this is the proposal that Tadas made. I'm going to bring up a few links here just to make it easier to kind of bring up everybody to speed and show kind of what I'm thinking here, as well as just help facilitate discussion. So I'm pulling up, I have a response. This might have been a private message. Hope you don't mind, Tadas, if it's private. I'll just scroll to years past. But we're basically talking about ORPolls and stuff. And also if I go to, I think it's optimistic.io/ORPolls, then we had like, oh, maybe it's not there even. Or no, it's actually at edencreators.com/ORPolls. We had like some early first branding for ORPolls, and then we talked about it at an Optimism Fractal event, like Optimism Fractal 10 or 11 or something like that. And I put together this proposal. Tadas later put together a more specific specifications for ORPolls here. and then we talked about it at one of these events too. And so yeah, this article is kind of like a bit messy. I'm sure we could add the video to better curate it there. But that's like a bit of an introduction for ORPolls. We talked about it, probably introduce it much better in EF 119 or 118. And then at that time, back in the beginning of 2024, Tadas had got inspired with all sorts of different names about what ORPolls can mean, like optimistic respect proposals, optimally leveraging leverage spiritedness, and so forth. I thought those were good ideas. And then I responded in more detail on April 7th, saying the reason why I like the word spiritedness. And then Tadas had been quite thoughtful in setting up the variables and mechanism. I think I left comments on a lot of these too about how it could work. Basically, the mechanism here was to pass a proposal. It needs to go through two stages. First, the voting stage, and if it passes the blocking stage, I don't know if I should read it all out loud because we didn't read out the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process, but basically, I see Tadas raise his hand, so I'll pass to Tadas in a moment. But first, I'll just wrap this up, basically saying that, yeah, Tadas had this here. We never have tried ORPolls, and then in this response I worked to draft to Tadas. I haven't reviewed this since, I guess I wrote this in April, when we were discussing it back in EF 118, 119. But I came to the conclusion that it's important to have discussions at meetings, and I think that ORPolls can allow that in the same way that Eden Plus Fractal can, but it's also a better balance where it allows proposals to be approved more easily, like the Optimism Fractal Council. So it's kind of like halfway between the Optimism Fractal Council, where it's really easy to approve proposals, and the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process, where you need to have meetings and discussions about it. And this basically allows you to approve proposals, but basically there's an event like that has to happen, and it has to be a town hall where people can discuss the proposal, but it will be optimistically approved, similar to the idea of ORDAO or the Optimism Fractal Council, where we optimistically approved if it's not like vetoed, basically, and there's that event where it could be vetoed. That's kind of like an oversimplification, but that's my thought, how the ORPolls idea, one, it'd be nice to maybe try something new, even though I love the Eden Plus Fractal and Optimism Fractal Council, so it might be beneficial for experimentation. And then two, I think that it could have that kind of like happy medium of liveness or easiness and security and engagement. So curious thoughts, what do you think?
Yeah, so basically ORPolls later became ideas behind ORPolls. Basically, OREC is basically OREC is basically ORPolls, and that's the same thing almost. It's a re-implementation of OREC and using polls and Snapshot, basically, or something like that. Yeah, the reason another reason why I started thinking about Eden Plus Fractal is because, like, technically you could make a case that the current consensus that we already have a consensus process, and it's Eden Plus Fractal. Because like that's what we passed previously, and that was what we have been using in Epoch 1. And so if we want a different consensus process, we could use Eden Plus Fractal to pass it. Like one Eden Plus Fractal, another advantage of Eden Plus Fractal is that it creates like it engages people where they review and before passing a proposal, because you need a vote from them to pass it. And yeah, I just feel like some of the proposals were really well reviewed thanks to it. Yeah, but yeah, like I said, I see some other issues then with bi-weekly, because of bi-weekly meetings.
You see issues with Eden Plus Fractal consensus process with bi-weekly meetings? Because say if we did it previously, like where
Dan, you just got super muted on your audio. Like not muted as an inaudible, but just like super I don't know how to, like you're in a tunnel or something.
Okay. That's what I mean, I'm sorry with that. Okay.
You're not as crisp as you were.
Okay.
So I don't know what changed, but
Maybe your mic got disconnected or something.
Is it any better now?
oh yes, much better.
Okay. Okay, cool. I just switched the audio input. Thanks for letting me know about that. Okay, well, I was trying to ask Tadas for clarification about you were saying the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process would be more, I don't know, difficult in some way, or it complicated based on the fact that we're doing bi-weekly events, because then rather than choosing, I suppose with the current mechanism, we'd be choosing for delegates not just for 1 month, but for 2 months, unless we made it where they only still do 1 month, but then in that case, then there's only 2 councils rather than 4 councils.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So yeah, and then that confused me a bit because I hadn't thought about that, how we never like really like stopped using Eden Plus Fractal. And we did stop using it. We stopped electing delegates. So technically we haven't elected a delegate since like maybe a year and a half ago. But we never like officially said that's not going to be the consensus process anymore. I think at some point I just I had said like because we stopped using that and we wanted to take a break, that I was going to say, hey, as the host, I'm just going to say we're going to have a break at this point. So I just became like a little dictator at that point. But like, aimed at being benevolent, but just to make a decision to have a break, basically. So in that way, we did kind of compromise we were making decisions without that process, but also, I guess as host, I always have that choice and authority to decide if I'm going to host or not. So it didn't necessarily stop the Eden Plus Fractal consensus process. Um, and so we also talked previously about how ORDAO would be the interim consensus process too, though, for legislative. So now it's kind of like we almost have two consensus processes for legislative rather than zero. So we wanted to have one, now we have two. We have both ORDAO as the interim legislative consensus process and also Eden Plus Fractal, which we never fully deprecated.
Well, it depends how you phrase it. I wouldn't call ORDAO legislative consensus process, but that does not mean that we cannot use it to build consensus for to make a decision regarding legislative consensus process or intent document.
And on the original intent of the tripark, what were the three entities that were identified as different branches? Or were there all three?
Yeah, so Dan, do you want to answer or?
Sure. Unless you want to answer, Josh, then feel free. But the three branches that we identified were legislative, executive, and judicial. And the respect
Right.
game is the judicial. The ORDAO is the executive. And this was focused on Optimism Fractal. So the Optimism Fractal Council was the legislative branch. And this is shown in the video as well as the research document.
So then where would Eden Fractal fit into that group, or it doesn't?
Well, I think Eden Fractal will have its own tripartite governance structure. So basically, it would have its own respect game, whereas Optimism Fractal has its respect game, but Eden Fractal has its own judicial branch, has its own ORDAO. So it has two of the same branches, but just for Eden Fractal, not for Optimism Fractal. And then what we're trying to figure out is what would be that third branch for Eden Fractal, that legislative consensus process. And we discussed having Eden Plus Fractal as a consensus process, a similar process like the Optimism Fractal Council, or something like the ORPolls idea as three different options, or having ORDAO serve as both the executive branch, but also potentially an interim legislative process too. Tadas?
Yeah, and I will just add that in Epoch 1, Eden Fractal had all three branches, respect game,
Right.
Eden Plus Fractal I mentioned earlier as legislative branch, and MSIG, multi-signature setup as executive branch, because that setup was used to mint respect. So it was executing decisions from.
But now ORDAO is a replacement for the multi-sig. So why don't we just put up a proposal that we go back to the Eden Plus Fractal. Is that, am I categorizing that right? Or characterizing that right?
You mean put up a proposal in our DAO?
Yeah, that the Eden Plus Fractal become the legislative branch for Eden Fractal, especially if it was a high attractant to bringing in new community members.
Yeah, that is an option. We could do that. But like I said, there are some concerns even from me regarding Eden Plus Fractal. Like I said, previously it worked with weekly structure, and that meant that you had to ask people to commit to coming to events during the upcoming month, which were 4 events, and now you would have to ask for people to come to meetings during the next 2 months, because the same 4 events, but they are spread out more. And I'm not sure like if that's not too much.
And Dan, refresh my memory. When are we scheduled to go on a season break
We're scheduled to go on a season
for
break
Eden Fractal?
for Eden Fractal. We're scheduled for our mid-season break. We'll have one more event on July 31st, and then skipping August 14th, and then coming back on August 28th.
And then that second half of the season will run through when?
Let me go check that. I think it ends on like November or something.
Okay, so that would give us more than 2 months runway, right? So a proposal that I would support is that we experiment with Eden Plus Fractal as a legislative branch after this mid-season break. So when we reconvene on the 28th, and that'll tell us like who's going to be involved, right? And I don't see anything wrong with that time frame as far as the delegation period and the time commitment, especially if we're having every 2-week events. Now, on the technicalities and the programming of it, to Tadas's point, it may require a little bit more manipulation there. But I'd like to at least experiment with it if everyone else would agree to that, or at least we'd reach enough consensus in a vote to at least experiment with that.
What part did you mention would need some manipulation?
Oh, I don't know if there's any technical things in the background from a developer perspective that would need manipulation based on the cadence of every 2 weeks versus every week.
Yeah, that wouldn't cause any problems, although it would be nice to submit the votes regarding the delegate on chain. So that would need some setup.
Okay. But I think that gives us enough of a runway now. If we at least mention it in the next Eden Fractal event before the mid-season break, so 2 weeks from now. And then that way everybody can be thinking about it over the mid-season break and then come back on the 28th with some really robust talking points around it.
Yes, so you're in favor of trying Eden Plus Fractal process after the mid-season break?
Correct.
Yeah. And I'm kind of like in favor of that too, because we have some new people here compared to Epoch 1. And I think it makes sense to have them try Eden Plus Fractal as well. Have another perspective on that process, test it in a basically a bit of different context. Yeah, and we could use that. Then we could actually evaluate Eden Plus Fractal and say if we need something better.
All right. Good points. Thanks, Will, for the proposal, and to Das for the reflections. I realize that we're over the time, so we should wrap it up soon. But I'll just say my proposal would be that we talk about this in more detail at our next event on the 31st. I agree with Will's proposal to adopt a consensus process when we return on August 28th from Eden Fractal, and then we'll do that for that second half, which will end on November 25th. Of course, we could change it throughout if we want to, but we'll aim to have something adopted for our legislative consensus process by the 28th. Perhaps during that break, we can also draft out an intent, an agreement, and anything else too. And then I'm still I'm open to trying the Eden Plus Fractal, and I like the idea of it, but I'm not convinced that that's definitely the best way to go. I think that it'd be good if we discuss and we compare the pros and cons of the Eden Plus Fractal versus the ORPolls idea at the next event on the 31st. And then I think either way, we probably need to do some sort of modification for the Eden Plus Fractal, or at least consider that if we want to do a 2 month delegation. Or yeah, I think that'd be the best idea. Basically, have next week's next event to discuss this, and then aim to implement either Eden Plus Fractal or ORPolls or something else on the 28th. That'd be my proposal. But of course, we can also go in some other route, or we can determine it. But I think being that it's like past top of the hour now, it's probably good to start wrapping it up, and we'll have
Yeah,
more time to think it over and discuss it both at next week's next event as well as over the break and stuff like that. That sound good?
sounds like a plan. Yeah, that sounds good to me. It's been a very productive conversation day at the Eden Fractal Town Hall, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree for about continuing the discussion during the next event, but just note that I don't think we currently have a clear specification for all polls. Like if we have a bunch of documents or abstract idea, but we have no document which like specifies it and in a way where we wouldn't see uh, any remaining issues. Whereas with Eden plus Fractal, it's like it has specification, it has been tested, and so basically it's something that we could just confirm during the that we are using it during the next event. Whereas unless someone would have to like finish the ORPolls specification, and we would still need some review period, I would say. So for me, it's not about, like Dan said, you're not sure if it's the best consensus process. My thinking is, of course, we don't know if it's the best, but I'm not looking for the best. I'm looking for a process that could later pass the better consensus process. So I'm looking for the most legitimate process to use right now that would basically get us to proceed in towards better consensus process.
Okay. Well, yeah, thanks, Tadas. I'm in line with you on that. There is this proposal that you made for the ORPolls idea, and I feel like my consensus was that if we combine what you currently had with my response to you about doing it with like a 2 week window, then we basically have that specification. But I'd have to review it though to see and think about it more. So maybe if I get the chance, I'll try to before the next event try to put together a proposal that takes what you have here and then just like customizes it rather than being a voting period of 3 days. It'd be like 14 days or something like that. And then see if that makes sense. And then we can compare the two specifications when we're at our next event and see. But otherwise, I agree with your idea that we could go with Eden plus Fractal to decide a different consensus process later. But yeah, I think this might be more ready than you think too. I'm not sure, but yeah, I suppose we can talk about
Yeah,
we can think about that in coming days and then talk about it on the
yeah,
31st.
yeah. Just don't forget to read your own comments on this page because I remember you made some good critiques about, especially this part. Yeah, right.
Oh
This
yeah.
it's one of the reasons why I felt it wasn't finished.
Okay. Well, yeah. It's always a little tricky. Like I remember when we were first talking about this in OrDAO, I'd be like, why don't we just do this? And you're like, well, that wouldn't work for this reason. It's like, oh, huh. That's true. So you have to really like make sure it's airtight. So thanks for the recommendation, and I'll remember to do that. And then yeah, looking forward to our next discussion. Thanks all. There's also getting pumped here. I don't know if Zal, you have any last comments you want to share, or if any of you has any last comments, or if we should wrap it up with maybe go eat and fractal whenever we're ready.
I'm not even kidding you guys. I had the thought that I want to create a brand or a show or a streaming thing in some way, shape, or form called the Council of Nerds, because there's a couple of specific people that I was thinking about in addition to you guys that I feel like would be a really good fit for it, because I love being in a room where I have I'm the dumbest person in the room, or I feel in the specific conversation, right, that there's enough people around me that everyone has more experience or this or that. And I just feel like that would be a very entertaining thing. So you guys made me think of that. I just love the vibes, the discussions. Like, some of it's super over my head. Other things I have thoughts on, but I don't feel involved enough to be like, I want it done this way. I'm more of a go with the flow, and I want to hear what you guys think, and then I'll take anything downstream. So yeah, appreciate you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Zaal.
Great title for a podcast, by the way, the Council of the Nerds. I love it.
Yeah, or maybe even our consensus process. We'll have to name it. Right now we have Optimism Fractal Sages. I brought up Optimism, in fact, Eden Fractal Captain's Council, and Tadas got very mad at me when I brought up that, I think. Just kidding, but he didn't like it so much. But maybe Council of the Nerds is the way to go for both the podcast as well as the Eden Fractal Council of the Nerds. Do you want to be a nerd this week? Who will be the best nerds?
I like it personally because it has that I feel like it's perfect for the crypto space because it's always had that connotation of whatever, right? Not a positive word, but I feel I and Onaji B, one of my other co-hosts, we always say to people, we're super nerds, we're super tech heavy. And it's just I love kind of taking back that, I mean, just like a lot of people, right? It's a good thing in the professional space, right? Versus in, schooling, you could say that it was used in a negative connotation. So.
Well, good point. Let's go nerds. I'm up for it. And yeah, I also noticed that too, Tadas, that Zaal was speaking while muted. So it seemed like Zaal was out nerding the Zoom technology in some way.
Yeah, we had someone here come in, so I just had to say hi.
Okay, very cool. Well, thanks so much, Zaal, for saying hi and sharing your thoughts, and looking forward to collaborating with you on all this stuff. And yeah, excited to embark on our next steps with Eden Fractal Epoch 2 and implement our consensus process.
All right, see you guys at the next event.
All right, see you, Will. Yeah, are we ready to wrap it up? Should we go 3, 2, 1, go Eden Fractal?
Sure, real quick.
Okay.
Come on video for it.
Good to see you, Will. 3, 2, 1, 0.
Go Eden Fractal!
All right, thanks all so much, and see you next time for the final events of the half season.